Right, welcome back. I am going to walk you through a recent capability I added to my code base, all software planning. What is all software planning? This is an app that I've been building for the last year, in and out with AI, trying to understand the potential of using AI coding assistants to help me build an app. This is my code base. You can find it on GitHub, all software planning. And here is the current state of the project, the code. This is the code base, and here's a README document. Basically, well documented. If you're really curious about this app and the potential for advancing or contributing to this project, you are most welcome. Over the weekend, or in the last few days, I've been focusing on this journey in software development in terms of improving code quality, adding unit tests, integration tests, and automated UI end-to-end testing, and all with the help of Codex, really. So this video is all about showing you what this thing looks like, and yeah, just walking you through the latest addition to this code base. So as you can see, I've got a bunch of files. The recent additions are around tests, added CI tests for unit and end-to-end testing. I've got a Cypress folder. Cypress is the framework that I've used to provide the end-to-end testing, and I'll walk you through what that looks like from an actual headed environment. And you can see it looks really cool to see how the UI and the app is driven by the testing framework, and to look for expected outcomes. Just to give you an idea of what my app looks like, just if this is the first time you're looking at this my channel, I've been building this app. Where can I find it? There we go. There's it over here. So this is the app. It's got a welcome screen. It's got a side menu, side panel menu, and a toolbar for general screen navigation. The purpose of this app is to allow me to experiment and to explore the different types of tooling that typical software engineers, software managers would need when managing a software development team and a bunch of software delivery projects. I'm going to create a separate video to really talk through this app, but basically here's the app. You can load a system, you can understand how the system is architected, what the services are, you can look at the various architecture diagrams, which is really cool. I think any kind of software engineer or a team would like to have access to understanding the system that they are currently developing. And from a management perspective, it would be really useful to see everything in one workspace regarding the kind of work you're doing, the product you're developing, the teams involved, and so forth. So it's still a collection of tools, but the whole idea is to have a central location for managing software projects that can be used by various types of roles, whether you're a software development manager, project manager, product manager, or you're a senior leader in an organization and you need to take care and inspect what your organization is doing. So for example, working at the top level, you'd have like a dashboard. So if you're a senior leader in this organization or the company, you'd like to understand what's the status of the goals that you're going to deliver in the year, how are these goals made up, what initiatives are linked to the goals, and what's the progress with respect to the initiatives. So this is one view in terms of if I'm a senior leader, I want to see how my product and engineering organization is working and delivering. I can come here and I can look at the status. So executives really want to look at goals and outcomes. They want to see what's been accomplished. So this is a point where when initiatives and goals are delivered, it will end up in this accomplishments page. You want to inspect your investments by the themes. So usually the work that you're doing in terms of your roadmap will be broken down by themes. So in this example, these are the typical themes for this type of platform: user experience, platform stability. You want to understand the level of investment in terms of software development engineering years, in terms of the estimates that are going into delivering the initiatives associated with these goals and these themes, and what's the percentage of your investment distribution for that year. And then there's another graph around your investment trend across the years. And usually it's around a 3-year plan, so 2025, 2026, and the level of distribution in terms of how investment priorities shift over time, right? And the themes. You can then have a look at, you have a bunch of software engineering teams contributing to your organization, and you want to see how loaded they are for the year. So this is a typical management view that gives you an idea of what the teams are working on, what their workload is. You want to understand the overall timeline for the year. A roadmap is broken down into quarters, and you'll have a nice view of when things are landing in the year in terms of your product and engineering roadmap. You are able to filter by team, and if I was a team leader or a software development manager responsible for one particular development team, I can come here and I can look at what the distribution of my work is for that year. If I'm interested in the 3-year time horizon as an executive to talk about my strategy, I can see how my product will evolve over the next 3 years. And then this is an interesting view in terms of the impact on the teams, or the different really impact views in terms of your investments. How does it impact a team? You can drill down into a team, and you can see in this particular example, this team called Dragons is contributing to all these types of work initiatives to deliver on the roadmap. So that's just one example. Got the general settings. Okay, I think I'm going a bit too far into my app's demo here, which is not the purpose of this video, but this is basically to give an overview of this app that I've been coding for the last year and a bit. And my coding has really accelerated in the last 2 months with the introduction of the latest models of Gemini 3.5, Claude Opus 4.5, and we've got Google's anti-gravity platform, which has been a game changer for me, at least. If you're really curious, you can, if this kind of things interest you, what you should be able to do here is you can create a system from scratch, and the mental model around any software product or tech startup or product organization, you are building a tech platform, you call it a system. A system is made up of a collection of services. The services expose APIs. The services have platform dependencies, and that's from an architecture perspective. Which is essentially why the system overview is really important. And okay, so I haven't loaded the system over here. So what is going on? Let me just go back over here, load an existing system so you can see what I mean. So the system architecture and so forth. So once you've defined the architecture, you want to organize your teams. You want to organize people around the architecture. So you generally form teams, and teams are responsible for owning services and owning APIs. So a team, a typical team, a Scrum team or a 2-pizza development team will have a software development manager, a bunch of software development managers. If there's quite a number of teams, they report into senior managers and so forth. From an organizational design perspective, you generally have your typical layout. You have an overall leader or VP responsible for the platform, and they've got senior leaders managing the teams, the two pizza teams, the squads, the tribes, and each team is made up of a bunch of engineers. What this tool tries to model real world software organization and software teams organization. It also goes a bit further by trying to anticipate what the future would look like. You'd have a mix of human engineers, as well as you would also have an AI software engineer, for example. So anyway, this is a work in progress. It is quite functional, and I'm iterating through this as I get time, in the evenings, weekends, holidays, and so forth. I have a big backlog, and I'll see where I get to. I'm not planning to kind of market or sell this app, but it's for me to explore the journey of software development. As AI evolves, my application will evolve, and over time, keeping up to date with the latest trends of AI assisted development will help me in my learning and also improve this application. So how previously, until this weekend, every time I introduced a new feature, I would have to manually test every single thing on my own, every click, and it was getting quite tiresome. Some features are quite complicated, so I'm trying to build an interactive Gantt planning tool here that could be a replacement for Microsoft Project, for example, or OmniPlan. And you can see that the interaction is complex, and the lack of automated tests is just going to be quite a bottleneck and will slow me down. So what I wanted to do is spend time addressing this lack of automated tests, lack of code quality testing, and also experiment and see what these AI assistants can do today. So with my code base in place, and it's a reasonably solid code base now, I've got over 280 files in my code base. I wanted to check whether Codex would be able to help introduce all the quality, starting with static code analysis, to unit tests, just testing units of code, functional code, and then going on to higher level integration tests and automated UI tests, and driving the front end so that I don't have to be clicking the buttons here and there, and also saves me a lot of time from specifying and speccing the tests myself and writing the test cases. I wanted to see if the AI could do this for me, and lo and behold, it actually did everything. So I've actually got a blog post. I'll link it in the description so you can read about my journey with introducing quality controls in a code base with Codex. One of the first things we started was with static analysis. So we introduced linting that will basically test the quality of your code, looks for stray variables, looks at unused variables and so forth, and basically creates a set of rules for your coding standards as a set of coding standards that your code can be reviewed against. Then we introduced Vite as the platform for unit testing, and then the latest is introducing Cypress for the end-to-end tests. So end-to-end tests. Okay, and this is what it looks like. As you can see, it's fully integrated with GitHub, and my last commit actually ran into an error. I don't really reject any commits at the moment, but this is interesting to see now that I've integrated the quality checks into my development pipeline and process and workflow, so that I can very easily see what happened with the last commit and what the failures were, for example. So if I go there I click on the failure. You can see some checks were not successful. It actually failed the quality lint push, but other quality requirements passed successfully. So really cool. This code base has been upgraded, has upgraded to a high quality bar now, which is what industrial, real world programming or software engineering teams are used to, right? I mean, today you don't build and launch any product, any app without automated tests running continuously, and you're not having a CI/CD pipeline. So I'm really chuffed that I was able to do this on my own in a few hours, and with a fairly large code base. Okay, it might be not as large as some real world companies, but the basics are there, and there's enough good software engineering hygiene that makes me comfortable now, even like publishing these videos and talking about this code. My so right, okay. So I'm gonna go and look at this. Is fully integrated with GitHub Actions and workflows. In the beginning, before I introduced the quality components, I was publishing my app. Every commit that I made on main would trigger a Git workflow to publish the single page application. So this was always there as part of the initial pages, Git pages deployment. So this is the standard deployment that Git does on every commit that will end up refreshing the site that you have access to. If you go to this platform, you will have access to it. So what's new? What's new are these workflows: tests, quality, and end-to-end. So one of the first thing I did was introduce quality checks with linting. So when I go to the actions, what happens is on every commit, every code commit now, the quality workflow will kick in, then the tests will run, then the end-to-end tests will run, and then eventually the page will be built and deployed. So you can see over here, this is the status of all the runs, and you can see some are red, some are green, and you'd be able to see, okay, if you watched another video, I just released a cool little tool for me to visualize the Git repo history and insights into this repository. And I put the code in the main code base, but it did not follow my coding rules and my coding contracts, and I need to exclude those source files from the linting review. But you can come here and then you can see what went wrong, and you can see, okay, and you can click, you can see, okay, this is what happened, and these are the rules. So when the job runs, it sets up the node environment, sets up all the dependencies, and then it runs the checks. And it found all the contract violations that I've set as my coding standards for my main repo, and it then said, okay, it failed, and it bypassed running the rest of the tests. So pretty cool from a code quality point of view. You can see that it's well integrated. Whoops, wrong one. Okay, so that's the workflow that kicks off the linting checks, and I've got automated tests here. So every check-in then will go and run a bunch of tests, unit tests for some core features. I don't have 100% test coverage just yet. I've just released the framework and I've just added a few items, and over time I will get to have 100% test coverage. But you can see, okay, what happens is you can just go into the commits, you can see, okay, this was run, and you can dive in and you can look at the status of what tests were running, and you can see, okay, This is the test scripts that were run, and these were tests to check if there were sample systems and basic checking the core functionality of the apps features, right? So here you go, you can go and look at the test cases. The test, it's in a test folder, and we have each component, each service has a test. You can see that we've covered 80% statements, 75% of the branches, 100% functional coverage, 100% line coverage. In fact, I've wrote about software quality many years ago. I think back to 2012. If you're interested about what software quality is all about, I will link that blog article in the description. So that's unit tests, and then there's end-to-end tests. And what end-to-end tests tries to do is to link features together and drive the app end-to-end to test a core feature or core thread of a collection of features. And similarly to lint and the unit tests, you can go in and you can inspect the end-to-end test suite. You can look at what was run. So the usual setup and startup story for running the workflow, and then you can dive in and you can look at, okay, I'm using Cypress. You have to have npm, you have to have the tooling installed. It's all documented on the codebase, and you can see this was started in a headless mode, meaning it runs in the background. I'm going to demo what is the actual headed version, so you can actually see, human and engineer can actually see your automated tests running and driving your application, which I think is also pretty cool and pretty powerful. So you can see a whole transcript and audit of what was run. There were 5 tests that were ran. It lasted 47 seconds. They all passed, and you can see what was being tested. So loading a system, looking at when you loaded the system, does it show the architecture? Can you switch views? Can you navigate to org design? Can you switch to the roadmap view? And so forth. Basically, what I've shown you on this app, it was trying to interrogate, can I go and drive and test the different features? So that's the test cases. And then it goes down, we have more tests that gets more and more detailed and complicated. So there's the planning and capacity workflow tests, product management tests, some AI tests, and general smoke tests. So you get the picture. So you can go and basically cover your entire application's feature set, write the automated test, so that every time you do a commit, you make sure these things run and that there's no regression in the features. So at the end, you can see in this example, the coverage was fairly decent, 52% functional coverage, 56% line coverage. Branch coverage is not tracing all the branches of the code, 33%, so that can be improved, and over half, 54% on the statements. So this is cool. It runs in the background and tests your code. So what? Well, these are the hidden things that generally people do not see or do not take into account in terms of the overhead and engineering quality and operational excellence needed to write a production grade app and to manage it and to make sure that the code that you introduce does not add any regression or breaks features, right? And I'm not too sure what the vibe coding platforms do with this regard. Maybe they do have similar unit tests and everything else built in. I have not spent much time with the vibe coding platforms. In coding this app, I went from first principles, prompting the LLMs, designing my prompts, writing my requirements, getting the code generated, doing it manually myself in my IDE, uh, and building the code that way. And I think I've only started getting into like the vibe coding mode was with the introduction of um, anti-gravity. Um, and then too, it's not like I let the coding, the vibe coding platform run and do its own thing. I'm very particular and very specific about what needs to be implemented. Um, so yeah, a lot goes on behind the scenes to build a production quality application, and this is my experiment to see if how I can use AI to get to that point to build solid code. Okay, right. At the end of it, I've also added code coverage. So we've got code coverage reports. So at the end of every test run or quality check, this will be produced, and you can go and inspect the various items or folders, files, and so forth in terms of how we're performing around code quality. Let's see if we can go there. See, I can drill into the folders, I can see the files, and I can see basically have a heat map of how I'm doing with my code quality coverage. So that's cool. What do I have over here? Okay, this is an example. So I just walked through the example of showing you what happens when a commit is made. And now I'd like to show you what the Cypress actually looks like behind the scenes. Earlier I said that in GitHub the workflows run in the background, they're background processes. Cypress runs in a headless mode, which means that there is no front-end browser. You cannot see what's happening. It's all in the back end, and it's all silently managed through the APIs and DOM manipulation and so forth. So basically, the browser is running the process, but you cannot see any browser application front end. But you can run Cypress in the browser mode, in open mode, and that's what I want to show you guys. So when you run Cypress, you will end up in this view, in a console view like this. This is my main code base, and these are the specs that I've written in terms of all the quality specs that I just showed you on the GitHub Actions view. So what you can do here is you can have end-to-end specs. This is testing how features interrelate and services interrelate, or you can go down to component level, service level specs to test the services out. Now I'm not using Cypress for that. I'm using Vite for my component level testing. So you can see I haven't set that up yet, but for end-to-end tests, this is the bunch. These are all my tests that I can run. And let's start with basic smoke test, because that's what I showed you in the beginning. So just pay attention to what's happening here. You can, once you click on this, it then starts running the test. So you can see here, it's done very quickly. It exercised a smoke test and ran through some steps to verify that things are working. You can see try to get to a point where we could show the grid of systems that we've got on the platform, and it's verified the expected sort of layout, and once it's clicked on a card and it's opened the system, it expects to go to the system overview page to render the system architecture view. So this is a basic smoke test, and I often used to do that all manually every time I made changes to the app, and now this is done for me automatically, right? So this one goes a bit further with the smoke test. It goes and looks at the system architecture carousel, then it goes and opens the roadmap. It goes and looks to see if the buttons are there. Basically the layout of your app, that what you said, what you have in code actually gets rendered. And this is basically that smoke test. And then there's a core features. So this is it. It's running through the core features as I mentioned earlier. Just look at the screen. It's going through every page. It's going and checking the layout of the toolbar, checking the buttons, and basically checking that everything is working for the core features. So these are the test, high-level test description. Does the welcome action cards render? Can we load sample systems? Can you create a new system in the welcome screen? See, this is after they've used, after users selects create system, it should open this edit system page. So this is that flow. And these are the core ones, right? Does it load the help documentation? So the app itself, I didn't show you that. Okay, I'll come back to that. But basically, on the home page, you can load documentation, and you'll be able to see what the app is about. So you get the idea. So it's a bunch of test cases running, and it's pretty cool to see how the engine exercises the UI and is able to inspect everything on the UI itself against the expected results. And then as we go deeper, there's advanced flows, and then there's some core features that I decided just to add. So if you look at the advanced flows, this is creating a new system from scratch, and it goes through the motion of defining the system, defining the services, defining the teams, and making sure that everything works. How cool is that? What else do we have here? Product management. This is creating testing all the features required from the product management capability. Can you create themes? Can you add goals? Can you add initiatives to your roadmap? And so forth. Again, it's not complete, but it's a start. What's this? Planning details. Okay, so this is the Gantt chart view I was telling you about. There's lots of interconnected configuration around planning that affects your overall detail planning. For example, your capacity calculations. A software manager would have to enter their company's leave policies, people's leaves, and so forth. That affects your capacity in your engineering team to do work. And then when you do your planning, you work with the available capacity after you've accounted for leave and training and offsites and on-call and whatever else that the team gets up to. So yeah, you can see that this particular planning test tries to connect the dots and see everything fits together. That if you edit your capacity and you tune your capacity, how do you model if, for example, this team needs to hire people, at which point would people be hired, your interview is done and engineers are ramped up and productive. That value then gets fed into the capacity, and then you use that in your detailed planning. So you can see I can still interact with this. Wonder what happens if I go here. Okay, there's the how-to guide. If you go on the app, you can see what this app is all about. You can provide feedback to me as well if you wanted to, and you can provide general feedback, submit a bug, feature request, or ask me a question. And I also just put a plug about myself if you really are interested in who I am. This is me, Mo Khan. You can find out more about the blogs that I publish and the YouTube videos that I make. So yeah, so this is my app, and this was basically describing my latest experiment with advancing AI and really like addressing technical debt and improving code quality. It's unbelievable. the lessons I've learned from this is that, I've managed engineering teams, as for a long time, and the kind of things that they get involved in. Some of it is operational work. This is upgrading from one framework to another framework, migrating from one test framework to another framework. We may have rushed something to market without having written any unit tests or integration tests, or having any automated CI/CD pipelines in place. And this example is a real world scenario. I mean, I've been building this code. The code has been growing for some time. I've been doing manual testing. I had to re-architect the code into services and so forth, and separate concerns and create interfaces, and keep abstracting the code so that it becomes more manageable. And I reached a point when, I can't ignore test-driven development for much longer. And it's amazing what you can do with these AI assistants, right? Codex 5.2, by far, my experience has been, it is so stable. It is able to run for long periods of time. It can run long running tasks and not lose the thread, and it is able to think wide from a system perspective, that it will continue solving the problem and only ask you for help and when it fails. And this is generally with some silly terminal command that it needs some permissions to run. But it went and analyzed. I asked it, look, help me bring up this code base up to industry strength. Let it be suitable and respectable from an engineering community point of view. What is the latest in automated tests given my initial lightweight vanilla HTML JavaScripts? I'm not running React or anything like that. What is the best of breed frameworks out there? It did the research. It gave me 3. I selected, and then we went. And then I remembered that my previous teams that I managed in Amazon AWS, at once upon a time, I think this was 4 or 5 years ago, one of our consoles had to migrate and implement Cypress for our console unit tests. End-to-end tests and integration tests. So I said, okay, why don't I just try this out? Very ironically, I had left Amazon, and in my time at Amazon, I hardly even I don't think I even looked at a line of code or even played with anything, because as a very senior leader, you really you're not close to the code anymore, and your engineers do all of this, and all of the detailed work. So this in itself, just 8-9 hours of playing with Codex and learning Cypress, and getting to see it in action, has been so empowering that if I was an engineering manager again, then I've really got the tools and skills and experience and context to have a good conversation with my engineers. And anyway, so I told Codex, let's go with Cypress. Let's try this. I want to see how it works. And it went off and did everything. Installed the frameworks, did the configuration, did the packaging, integrated with GitHub Actions. And then all I said was, look, scan my code base, read my documents. You understand what this application is doing. You have a good view of the architecture. Go and write the test cases completely, as much as possible. And it went and did all the test cases. And so here I am, just watching it do its thing, whilst I could work on another app that I'm building for my other project at work. So these things, you have to experience it. You have to experience it. The world is changing. The world of software is changing. The world of software engineering management is changing. And whilst AI might not take away software engineers' jobs, maybe, not anytime soon, but it's coming, man. It's coming. I mean, I've not written code in a number of years, many years, right? I was a principal engineer back at 2010, I think, and I built server-side code, and I always like put off learning to code again because I branched into so many things in management and leadership that the closest I could do to remain technical was to, you know, I'm a professional member of IEEE and ACM, so I read the journals and look at some blog posts, podcasts, and videos. And I got and I read the books, but I haven't really you know hit the keyboard and started coding. Not until this whole AI thing, man. This whole AI thing has got me kind of hooked. And what I'm trying to say is that, well, it is really powerful now that a lot of people, maybe in my boat or not, like if you experienced and you felt that you were becoming irrelevant or you just couldn't keep up with the technology and the pace of software engineering, and you couldn't keep up with your developers, well, now you can. But all this knowledge and experience and skills can come rushing back, and you can have one or two AI coding assistants helping you, and you can build something great. But then also coming back to how the world's gonna change. Yeah, it's amazing, it's interesting, and one of the things I have to do now is in my own work, in my own company. In the business that I'm running for. I'm in charge of many things, of which is a product and engineering team, and I can't ignore this now. I can't ignore the impact and the productivity gains that can come with using AI assistants. Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking now. So yeah, this was Cypress. This is Codex. Thank you, Codex. Thank you, OpenAI. Thank you, Codex. This is fascinating, and it has quite a pleasurable experience watching this Codex do all its things and help elevate my code base to the next level. Cool. Please, you can read my blog for further details, and the links to the blog are in the description. Cheers.